At the heart of the anti-Semitic claims against Israel, since October 7th and even before, is this accusation of Israel being an occupying force, illegally occupying the land of the Palestinians. Well, it's time to set the record straight. Listen to this brilliant explanation by British barrister and lawyer Natasha Hausdorff. She states it brilliantly, succinctly, and very, very clearly.
A critical rule of customary international law that determines the borders of newly emerging states at their moment of independence. It is called uti possidetis juris. It's applied universally wherever there is no agreement to the contrary. So it's the default rule. And in Israel's case, in 1948, it determined that the pre-existing administrative lines of the British mandate that preceded the State of Israel became Israel's international borders when it declared independence. This is the rule, that the pre-existing administrative lines become the new lines, the new borders of the state. And the reason that it was introduced was to promote stability and certainty and to prevent fratricidal struggles. The International Court of Justice outlined these justifications for it when it recognized that it had become established. It was introduced in the 19th century, applied in South America with the withdrawal of the Spanish. It's applied in Asia and Africa, also to the dissolution of the former communist federations. Ukraine's borders followed uti possidetis juris. And that's quite a critical comparison, because I think the three of us would agree that Russia has been in occupation of Crimea from Ukraine. Why is that? Because Crimea was part of Ukraine according to the rule of uti possidetis juris at Ukraine's formation. Well, in the same way, when Israel came into existence, the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza fell within that territory of the administrative lines of the pre-existing British mandate. And that's critical, because immediately in this war of annihilation that I've described, Jordan occupies the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Israel, and Egypt occupies Gaza. And that occupation ended in 1967 when Israel recovered that territory. That's when this allegation of occupation for many people is dated from. The problem with that is you cannot occupy what is already your own sovereign territory.
I.e., if Ukraine was to retake Crimea and hold it, no one would say that was occupation of Crimea.
From Russia,
yes.
Indeed.
Right, okay.
And that is a stark parallel comparison. Now, what Israel did in 1967 is it applied its law, administration and jurisdiction in full over East Jerusalem. It reunited the city, but it didn't do so in the West Bank. Instead, it applied a temporary framework. Why? Because under the Land for Peace formula, it expected that it would give up some of the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, to Jordan in pursuit of peace. But when the 1994 peace agreement with Jordan finally came about, Jordan didn't want anything to do with the West Bank. So this temporary administrative framework that Israel established in 1967 held until the Oslo Accords and the creation of areas A, B, and C that we've described. But the application of this term occupation it's another blood libel, because it has no basis in international law. It is used as a political term. And the preface to it, this illegal occupation, which is so often referred to, is also only ever applied to Israel. There is no concept of a broader concept of illegal occupation in international law. And in all the instances, situations of real occupation, in the context of which is envisaged by the Geneva Conventions, and the context of, the real transfer of populations, in Cambodia, Vietnam, in Nagorno-Karabakh, in northern Cyprus, none of these cases has this allegation of illegal occupation or illegal settlements even been advanced. So this is another example of a modern blood libel being deployed against Israel in order to shape the discussion, in order to shape the international politics and diplomacy, in order then to put pressure on Israel. And we've seen the consequences of that, I'm afraid, in so many respects. This is what led to the 7th of October.
Beyond the brilliant explanations of Natasha, we as Jews actually have a far, far stronger claim to the land of Israel than merely that of the past 75 years since the United Nations voted the land of Israel to the Jewish people. You see, the only country in the world that's called the Promised Land is the land of Israel. And the reason it's called the promised land is because it was promised to the Jewish people by the master of the universe, by God Almighty. And the title deed to this land is in the world's most published book, in the most popular document known to mankind. It's the Bible. In countless locations all over the Bible, God promises the land of Israel to the descendants of Abraham, his son Isaac, and his son Jacob. Jacob, of course, being the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. For example, in Genesis 12, verse 1, it says, "Go forth from your country to the land that I will show you." God is speaking to Abraham. "I will make you a great nation. To your offspring, I will give this land." The verse continues in Genesis 15, verse 18. "On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, 'To your descendants I've given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." What that means is the river Nile to Iraq, the Euphrates. So we're talking, actually, biblically speaking, far, far more than what they call the river to the sea. They're talking about the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which is the sliver of land that the United Nations gave to us in 1947. The biblical borders of the land of Israel are actually far, far wider than the United Nations skimpy borders to the land of Israel. And the verse continues in Genesis 17, verse 7. "I will establish my covenant between me and your descendants, and I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all of the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession." Of course, the land of Canaan is ancient biblical Israel. And the verse continues in Exodus when we move on to Moses. Moses, who's now leading the Jewish people out of the slavery in Egypt. God tells him in chapter 6, verse 4, "I establish my covenant to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojourning. I will bring you into the land." Finally, the promise continues in the final book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 5, when God is now speaking through Moses to the Jewish people as they're about to enter the promised land. "The Lord your God will bring you into the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it." This is just a small sliver of quotes from the world's most published document, the Bible, promising the land of Israel to the Jewish people. Which Western nation is able to say that they've lived in the same land for 3,000 years? Not France, not England, not America, not Canada. Nobody is able to say that their connection to the land of Israel is as old as the connection of the Jewish people to this land. There's a reason why it's called the land of Israel. And there's also a reason why the anti-Semites are trying to change the name of the land of Israel. They're trying to retroactively rewrite history. It's not Palestine. It's Israel. There is no history to the land of Palestine. Name one statesman who led the land of Palestine. Name one book written by a Palestinian author, one song written by a Palestinian musician, one achievement, one innovation. There is no such thing, because the Palestinian people were only invented in 1967, approximately, when the Palestinians realized, the Arabs realized, that they were losing the war against Israel militarily. And together with the Russians, they crafted a brilliant diplomatic strategy, which would be to try to beat the Jews through ethics and morality instead of through weapons and through war. It's time for us Jews to let go of anti-Semitic terms like West Bank, which are trying to remove ownership of the land of Israel from the Jews retroactively. West Bank means it belongs somehow to Jordan. It's biblical Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria is the name of this land. Let's drop this title. Don't talk about Palestine. Talk about Israel, and don't ever use the word occupied. You cannot occupy your own home, as Natasha just explained so brilliantly. It's time for us Jews to stand proud and unapologetic. The nations of the world are actually waiting for us to believe in ourselves, because when we don't believe in ourselves, how can we possibly expect anybody else to believe in us? It's time for us to strengthen our connection to the Bible. You see, if we're abusing the Bible, we can't claim the Bible as our title deed. But when we keep the Shabbos the tefillin, the mitzvahs, when we observe the commandments and we show God that we are indeed his chosen people, it's then that we can claim the promised land. Because guess what? Every other claim to the land of Israel just ain't working. When we say, well, what about the Holocaust? And well, what about the United Nations? And we say, well, what about the amazing innovations coming out of the land of Israel? These are all Baba Mises. The nations of the land refuse to accept them. They hold no water. The only argument that holds water in the face of the nations is that God gave us this land. It's the promised land, and we are the chosen people. The world believes it. It's the Jews that are struggling. Folks, it's time for us to man up, to stand up for the destiny for which we were born, to declare, Hineni, here I am a Jew, I am chosen, and this is my land, without apology and without fear.